I think it's time we shine, so baby.
And welcome back to Red Card. I'm your host, Anthony Totera. As I said, stay tuned at about 8:32 or so. We'll go out to Minnesota to talk with Hall of Famer and Canadian legend Alex Bumber. Get his thoughts on, boy, oh boy, not a good start by Minnesota, but we'll get his thoughts on the new Canadian League that is on the horizon. Within days or weeks, we'll possibly hear of an announcement. Get his thoughts on that. But joining us right now from 442 USA, the national reporter of MLS, my friend and yours out there, Paul Tenorio. Paul, welcome, my friend.
Thanks so much for having me.
Pleasure's all mine. Really appreciate you making the time, Paul. Let's get right to it. I was chuckling before the show started. I don't know if you got a chance to see it or not, but here we go. The social media war. The Portland Timbers and LA Galaxy get it on, and then the owner, Mara Paulson, gets involved in regards to that really suspicious call yesterday. I enjoy this. This is fun, and I think this is what the league needs, a little bit of spice to all this. You?
Yeah, I mean, I actually didn't see it, but I agree. I mean, I always look for more drama. I think the league will benefit from it. I loved when Caleb Porter and Oscar Pereira had the tissue thing a couple years ago, and anytime there are little barbs traded between players and clubs, I think it's a good thing for MLS. It gets people talking, it gets people interested, and look, at the end of the day, professional sports is entertainment, and the more entertainment you can provide on the field and off the field, the better. So I'm all for all that stuff.
Yeah, so am I. I think you're going to want to have a look at it after we're done, Paul, because it's quite interesting and it's quite enjoyable to see them both go at it. Let's get talking about some of the action on the weekend. I was really happy to see Chicago get that win against Real Salt Lake. They've looked good in the first couple games. I like what they're doing this year in compared to years past. They have a system in place. They brought in some important pieces like Dax and a proven scorer from overseas. And I think that this is the year they'll get into the playoffs and possibly make noise. You?
Yeah, I mean, I think they've made progress for sure. I mean, having seen both of their games, I think they've played two good halves of soccer and two bad halves of soccer. But last year, this was a Fire team that, when they were playing poorly, they weren't going to get a result. They weren't good enough. They weren't organized enough. They weren't. They didn't have enough veterans to play poorly and win. And we've already seen from this team, they've had two games now where they have survived bad halves of soccer to stay in the game and preserve results. And they have 4 points through two games to show for it. And I think it's a real sign of the maturity in this team. Dax McCarty especially has been huge. I mean, this last game against Real Salt Lake, as he's playing in the game, he's turning backwards and directing the back line to stay more compact. He's yelling at the forwards in front of him to be pressing when they're supposed to be pressing. He's organizing everything on the field as he plays his own role. It just goes to show how valuable of a player he is, and Juninho as well. I think Junie didn't have his best game, his first game of the season. Obviously, he missed the first one, but you can see his quality right away. And they're very, very good in the middle of the field, and now it's a matter of coming up to speed in the rest of the field. I think the back line needs to get better, be able to communicate a little bit more. The front line is still working through being able to play together, understanding each other's movements. And as a team, they need to stay more compact when they press. But I think they're definitely a lot closer to a playoff team than they were last year.
To me, I believe the clock is ticking on Ben Olsen. They get spanked yesterday against New York City FC. I think this guy's on the hot seat if they get another couple results like they did yesterday. Your thoughts?
Well, I think it's difficult when you look at DC United. I mean, we know that they have worked on a budget, on the worst, tightest budget in Major League Soccer over the last few years. And Dave Casper, I think, does not get enough credit as a general manager in this league for what he's been able to do with that team, considering the budget they've put in place, not just for the first team, but all around as a franchise. And that goes into transfer fees, that goes into allocation money, that goes into everything. So a real credit to what they've done there. And I think it eases the pressure a bit on Ben Olsen. The stadium now, they broke ground on the stadium. They're expected to be moving into that stadium midway through next year. And just the fact that it's being built and that it's opening, they're going to start opening the purse strings as well. So I think Ben Olsen has earned the right to have a little bit more time there. I think he'll get a chance to add some players in the summer window. They're going to start to spend a little bit more. And I think that the ownership in D.C. is willing to give Ben Olsen a chance to show that he can coach with a team that spends real money and not with a team that looks for every way that it can save.
To me, Atlanta United does not look like an expansion team. We know that they handed Minnesota their lunch, but even in their first game, Paul, they looked organized, they looked compact, they understood what their coach wanted from them, and I think this could be a real surprise this year. Atlanta United pushing a lot of people, for a playoff position. Your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, they're not an expansion team in almost every sense, right? I mean, they spent $60 million on their training facility, the most amount of money at least spent on a training facility in Major League Soccer. They're going to be playing in a $1.5 billion stadium. They spent $15 million on transfer fees alone in this window. They have been incredibly aggressive. They have a coach who is the second highest paid coach in Major League Soccer. So you see right away the ambition of this club. They are ready to win right away. They have a team that's capable of doing it. And Miguel Almiron, they spent $8.5 million on a transfer fee to bring him up from the Argentinian league. And he has shown why he was on the radar of teams like Arsenal. He is a dynamic player. Every time he touches the ball, he can do something dangerous. Joseph Martino from Torino, coming over, the Venezuelan striker, had a hat trick against Minnesota. Yamil Assad, he's on a very good number, but they went and brought him out of Argentina. So this Hector Villalba, the other DP I didn't even mention on the right side, just goes to show the depth. So it's an incredibly, incredibly good team. I think they're absolutely a playoff team. And not only did they go and spend money and bring players from overseas, but what I really like about this team, I think it shows what Paul McDonough learned from his time in Orlando. They went out and found MLS veterans that can come off the bench, that can be in the starting lineup. Guys like Michael Parkhurst, guys like Jacob Peterson, Jeff Laurentowicz, Tyrone Mears, people who know this league, have played in this league. That is huge. That is a huge balance to everyone they brought from overseas, and we're seeing, I think, right away the impact of that kind of experience on the team as well.
Here in Toronto, a lot of people a little bit concerned early on that this team does not look like the team that finished off last year, Paul. A couple games that they have looked in spurts real good and then real bad in some other spurts. The draw against Philly, Jovinko going out with an injury, nothing serious there. To me, I believe that they better get things going in the next couple games. A lot of questions need to be answered. Will Greg Vanney finish off the year? Will there be something coming in the summer transfer window? On and on and on. People were going to get real restless here. Your thoughts?
I love it. I think it's great. I think it's a great thing that people are asking those questions right away. I mean, it shows the growth and development of this league. I mean, this is a Toronto team that just a few years ago was a laughingstock in MLS, right, for the way that they had failed in so many different ways. And they've built a very good team. I'm not worried about them. I think they're going to finish at the top of the East. I still think they're going to be a team that challenges for MLS Cup, but I think it's a sign of progress, the amount of pressure that is on the organization, on the coaches, on the players in Toronto. It's a good thing. And, I think they're going to improve as the season goes on. I wouldn't be surprised to see them go and add some pieces in the summer window. It's always difficult coming off of a year where you go to MLS Cup to look at your team and say, okay, we need to improve here, here, and here. They obviously went and added a piece in the middle of the field, but they felt pretty comfortable elsewhere. And over time, I think you'll see a lot of teams find out that players aren't going to replicate their career seasons from the year before, and it's always worth looking and seeing if there are outliers who maybe are going to come back down to reality a little bit and then look to upgrade those positions. They're lacking a little bit in depth. We saw, obviously, having to start Endo at right back, not ideal. But these aren't issues that are going to tank their season. I still have faith in Toronto, and I think they're going to be successful. They'll find their way as the season goes on.
Paul, a couple other areas before we let you go quickly. Let's touch upon, again, unfortunately, we have to talk about some of the mysterious calls on the weekend with the refs. And we saw the LA-Portland game, everyone really confused, shaking their head on that call. And on, we talk about this league growing up by bringing in some quality players like Jovinko, like Kaká, and so many others, and coaches like in Atlanta. They still, in my opinion, I've been following this league since day one, need to grow up in this department. Why not invest the money and start bringing in some refs from South America and some from Europe? Your thoughts?
Well, I mean, look, I think there have been some mistakes for sure this past weekend. Talking to a lot of people about Jelle Van Damme's red card. The first yellow obviously was a dive. but he earned the yellow for dissent after that. That's something you can control even if you disagree with the call. The second yellow, again, another dive, but he is reaching in there in an area where he shouldn't have been. He missed him, but he should not have been diving in that way. At the same time, was it a red card? Absolutely not. Did he miss the call? Absolutely. But then I go to the flip side from the game that I was on the sideline in Chicago, and the referee absolutely nailed the call on the first goal. I mean, everyone thought it was offside. The linesman thought it was offside. RSL stopped playing. It wasn't offside. He toe-poked the ball back to his own. The defender toe-poked the ball back. That kept Nikolic onside. It was a fantastic call by the center official. So, you know, for every bad call, there's a great call like that, and I think it's worth pointing that out as well.
Last point is this, Paul. Last area I wanted to cover you on is this. I've been reading on social media, and a couple people have done some pieces. Now, we're starting to hear that the American-born player is getting little by little squeezed out for a starting position in MLS, where a lot of players from Europe, South America, Central America are taking young American players' spots. You know, I've been yelling and screaming for the last couple of years for Canadians to get their own league. That's coming sooner than later. I'm afraid that, you know, when MLS was started way back, it was for the American player and American coach to help out the national team, on and on. I'm afraid we could be talking about this more in the next coming months. You?
You know, I wrote a story about this actually at the beginning of the season. I went through the numbers myself and really dove into the stats here. And look, at the end of the day, there are more Americans in important positions in professional soccer here in the U.S. than there have ever been. Because of expansion, there are more jobs that are available. Because of homegrown players, we're seeing more young players coming through the system. Yes, there are more international players coming through. That is, in my opinion, in the short term, maybe it hurts American players in some areas. But in the long term, it's better for American soccer. The only way to improve this league is to import talent right now. And the players, the domestic players, both Canadian and American, are going to get better playing alongside the likes of guys like Ignacio Piatti, Nico Lodero, Sebastian Jovinko, Kaká. I mean, you're going to get better being around those types of players. In addition, we talk all the time about going to Europe to get better, to make the national team better. Well, why? Because there's constant competition. You have to fight for your starting job. Nothing was guaranteed to Christian Pulisic when he went to Germany. He had to go over there and prove it at Dortmund and fight for a job, and every week he has to fight to get into the lineup. Why should that be different in the United States? Why should that be different in MLS? If this league can improve by bringing in international players, and it makes it more challenging for the domestic players to get in the starting lineup, and they have to get better and be more dedicated to get into the starting lineup, I've got no problem with that. Again, I think it's good in the long term, and anyone that tries to argue with me otherwise, I just don't agree with it. This is how you improve in the long term. You have to have a vision that goes beyond the next 4 years. The only person that should be worried about the next 2 years in a World Cup is Bruce Arena. Everybody else should be looking beyond that at how can we improve for the long term. And in my opinion, this is the way to do it. And American players over time are going to get better, and you're going to see that number increase.
And I hear everything you say, Paul. And we'll close it out with this. Then why not extend it and look into the coaching department? Look what Atlanta's done by bringing in a wonderful coach that is not American. Why have they not decided to look at more coaches from Europe, South America, and wherever, and help bring the game to another level as well?
Well, I think, first of all, the biggest problem is because of the rules of Major League Soccer. It's very difficult to get to understand that league. It's different coaching and being a GM versus playing. At the same time, I do think in the last 2 years, we have seen teams reaching outside of the normal bubble in a good way. We've seen Tata Martino. We've seen Patrick Vieira. We've seen Veljko Paunovic. So there are teams that are looking outside of that normal bubble. I wouldn't be surprised to see even more teams doing that. Not just, by the way, with coaches like that, but I would also point to coaches who have a different mindset than the normal American coach. Oscar Pereira, who's had a great amount of success, even though he spent much of his career here. He brings the South American influences. Wilmer Cabrera, the decision in Houston to go to Cabrera instead of Will Brune. That is to try to replicate the formula in Dallas. So I do think you're starting to see more ownership groups, more front offices looking for new ideas. This league is growing. It's growing in the player base. It's growing in the coaching base. It's growing in the academy. It's just 20 years old. I really do believe that there are steps being taken in this league that are positive steps not just for the short term, but for the long term. And I think you're going to see those trends continuing.
Paul, you're a fountain of information. I can't thank you enough for taking time out of your busy schedule. Keep up the great work at 442 USA. And again, we really appreciate you joining us, my friend.
No problem. Thanks so much for having me.
Paul is a class act. This guy, everyone knows him in MLS, and this guy's stock is rising. I've had Paul on for the last couple of years, but this year I've noticed his rise continuously going higher and higher. And all over North American MLS, people know now who to go for and who to read. And all the rumblings out there, all the scuttlebutt, all the rumors that become accurate, follow Paul Tenorio of 442. After this commercial break, we'll talk to Hall of Famer, Canadian legend Alex Bumbry, right here on Red Card. Stay tuned.